So today we have Eric Gilbert. Eric Gilbert is a Christian leadership and mental health coach and is founder of Rising Calm, which is a Christ centered coaching movement for those who feel stuck, overwhelmed, or spiritually drained after a season of trauma, performance pressure, or relational hurt. He's had 15 years of experience and many clients. And Eric integrates neuroscience, somatic healing, spiritual renewal, and helps his clients regulate their nervous system, restores their trust in God, and rebuilds a life that reflects their true identity. He has a 10-week course, which is Faith Over Fear program. He also is the author of Courageous Calling, How Men Rise from Fear, Walk with God, and Lead from Faith. Welcome, Eric. I'm so happy to have you.
Thanks so much for having me, Tara. Man, what a joy to be here. How awesome to be able to do this together, huh? Technology is
Yes,
amazing.
I know it so is. It so is. I want to start with, well, first of all, I want to start with the quote that you use, which is healing doesn't mean you weren't hurt. It
Mhm.
means your pain no longer gets the final word. I think that's so powerful. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, sometimes we can have people in our lives that might say things to us like, oh, get over it, or that was in the past, or you need to focus on the present, those kind of things. And this is more of a both and statement. That hurt you went through, that trauma you went through is very real. Yeah, it did have an effect on you. Yeah, it changed how you perceive the world. Yeah, it even changed how your body reacts under pressure or stress now. And those emotions, those things that you thought or perceived of the world have been traumatized. It's shaken up what you thought life was really about or who you are. But at the same time, it's being able to recognize that it doesn't have the final say. It's being able to say that doesn't mean that you're stunted forever. It doesn't mean this has to be the rest of your life. I'm working, for example, with a young middle school boy right now, and he's recently been understanding more about his depression. And it's partially because his mom has understood more about her depression and the genetics behind it and everything like that. And being able to see that heaviness as he's starting to realize, oh, this is something that I might have to continue have to battle with day after day, week after week. But being able to say that's not the end of your story, that you're going to be able to see yourself grow. And that's why I really got focused around helping people to reset their autonomic nervous system. Because a lot of that, when we go through trauma, is also stored in our body. So being able to help make those shifts in our body and our nervous system helps to release us from those things, to be sometimes not even just the person we were before, but sometimes a person with even more depth, even more understanding, even more compassion, more empathy, because we've been through some things and we're out on the other side now.
Oh, definitely. That's great. I just feel like all of our, I call it finding the diamonds in your crap stew sometimes. All of our stuff can be redeemed. And I don't think God wants to waste any of our suffering. And
Yeah.
it can all be used to help us, grow us, and then it can impact and help others. So it's pretty powerful. What led you into this pursuit of helping others suffering from anxiety? Because honestly, Eric, I've talked to my kids and asked them like, what's your relationship with anxiety? And
Yeah.
they all struggle with some social anxiety and it comes out different ways. One will talk a lot, one will just avoid, one will, all these different things. And then I talk to my different friends and ask, well, how do you feel about anxiety and social anxiety? And I have to say, I think everyone struggles with it to some degree.
Mhm.
And one of the biggest things we don't realize is we're not alone. I mean, it's so important to know that we all struggle in different ways. And yet it's such a challenge in these days. So talk into what helped led you into this pursuit to help people suffering from anxiety.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Tara. And you're absolutely right. Like when you think of anxiety, it's not even necessarily a disorder in itself. Anxiety can actually cause eustress, healthy stress, that would cause us to
Yes.
take appropriate action in the situation. I started to realize in my story, as it was actually a real time of reflection for me. My good friend Raphael and I were working on an idea for business partnership, being able to help people, husbands in particular, within their marriage and everything like that. And then he just sensed that God was calling him another direction towards more of the auto industry and being able to use his skill set there. And so I had this void of kind of like, okay, I thought this was what the path was going to be. And then it allowed me to also get really personal with God and say, okay, so if that's not the path, what do you have for me? And I said, God, I really would want to help people in a way that I've gone through in my own personal journey as well. And this is now around like 2018, 2019. I've already done a number of years in marriage and family therapy. I've already done a number of years of helping people with different things. And I really wanted to get selective on like, well, who are the people that really I'm designed to be called towards to help specifically? And so 2018, 2019, I get into this prayer mode and this time of reflection. I started looking over my life, even from childhood, and I started to realize, wow, when I was a kid, I had this thing called like selective mutism. I didn't really want to even talk to other people, friends, church people. I didn't even want to talk necessarily to my parents that much. The only person I wanted to talk with sometimes was my older brother. And so he would sometimes take the message from what I said and then pass that message on to my parents on my behalf. And then I started to realize, well, that anxiety kind of carried through in different ways as I got into school. And I'd feel like sometimes a spotlight was on me. And then I'd feel like the pressure of somebody was just making a joke, but I would take it very personally. And I'd be anxious that I had to do something. So as a boy, I would sometimes just get right into fight mode where it's like, you're going to screw with me? I'm just going to go ahead and fight you.
That always solves it.
I went ahead and just fought the biggest kid in my class at one point. He probably was about twice my size, but I'm like, I'm just going for it. I don't care, you know?
Yeah.
So I actually did some counseling as a kid with my parents to help me get more in touch with those things and what was driving my anger. And then I started to see how it was showing up even as an adult, especially when I was doing marriage and family therapy and those studies, to be able to see, man, anxiety is just one of those things, even as I've really put my whole life into living wholeheartedly for God, that I still feel this struggle and this pull. And if I'm not careful, I'll just go into overthinking. I'll go into the same patterns. I'll feel the nervousness inside of me. And I really wanted to do something about that. So then I started to also through that journey when I started marriage and family therapy in 2010 to 2012. I started getting more into like a deep dive of what does it mean for me to really mature and grow in these areas and what's available. And that's kind of become just such a huge passion and something I want to dive deep into. And so 2018, 2019 was really the time of being able to actually bring that up to the forefront of saying, maybe Eric, it wasn't just for you, but it's for others. And of course, this is right before the pandemic, right? So I literally start the company Rising Calm. I get the website. I start seeing clients at the office. And 1 year later, pandemic, everything
The
shut down.
test.
Yeah, for real. And then it felt like, well, God, at least you helped prepare me for something where people really have a need now. And I pray that you would help me to just be able to steward this well and to be able to help them in real ways and to see a path forward out of this thing.
Yes, that's great. And especially when you speak specifically to men, I just love that. That's so important. I'm offering some free pages of the Unravel Notebook to help support you along the journey and to correlate with this week's episode. So look for the link and enjoy. What are some things that are contributing to that you're seeing in society or just being a man that's contributing more to increasing anxiety? What are some
Yeah, there's a
contributors?
lot of factors. If you think about how much information we get inundated with on a daily basis, even not necessarily like all evil or bad news, but just the amount of messages itself, the amount of faces that we see through our phones or through news or TV, all these kind of things are hitting us. Um, I don't know the exact number, but I've heard that what the amount that we get exposed to now is about 50 times the amount that people 2 generations ago would see on a daily basis. So if you can imagine, I have to have 50 times the capacity of being able to handle this stuff and this much information. So I think particularly around men, when it comes to the anxiety, a lot of times we can be driven so much towards performance, even as Christians.
Yes.
Of I want to perform, I want to be the best athlete, or I want to be the person that knows the word the most, or the most godly person, or the best husband, or especially in career or money. I don't know how your YouTube feed looks, but sometimes when I get these commercials, it's like, do this app and make this much money. Let me show you my sheets. And it's like in 30 seconds, it started getting into like all these insecurities for me of like, oh man, they made that much money that fast. Like, how much am I making? How am I doing? And if I'm not careful, if I'm not anchored in Christ, it's easy to get anxious. It's easy to feel like I'm not doing enough or I'm inadequate through all of that.
I was just talking to my husband about that today, about how if you can, just the things with social media, if it's giving us messages that are causing our body to feel anxious regularly, we need to probably
Mhm.
consider adjusting our social media or adjusting our input. And I know a lot of people that have made some really big changes in that because it was affecting their body. And somatic,
Mhm.
I don't think a lot of people understand what somatic healing is and how our
Yeah.
bodies are like talking to us, because I think sometimes I do see this a lot in Christianity. It's like we're just going to chop off the head and focus here and
Mhm.
forget about all
Yes.
this. So tell
Yes.
me more your thoughts on, tell me something about somatic healing and the importance of that.
Yeah, that's a great analogy, Tara, because it's true. Like a lot of times it is kind of like, well, I just got to put my mind there and just my thoughts, and that's all I can think about. And then unfortunately, sometimes people can just let their body go to the wayside, you know,
Yes.
where they don't think that has anything to do with Christ or that doesn't part of their relationship or it's somehow wrong to even focus on my body. That instead, it's more like my body is a temple for the Holy Spirit. So, what does it look like to actually use my body and know that God's given it to me as a purpose for being able to be a part of my healing? You know, especially if you go through trauma or somebody's abused your body. I've had people in my past, not constant ongoing, but people that have abused my body before. And going through that experience, sometimes you can feel this heaviness around your body. Like it's guilty, it's dirty, it's shameful, all those kind of things. And so, as we do these things of somatic exercises, a neat thing that a lot of the science is pointing out around this is that if we want to be able to change things, especially around trauma, the relationship between the mind and how much that contributes to ourselves compared to our body and how much that contributes to the trauma and being able to shake that off. Do you already know what the mix
Yes.
is? They found like about 80% of it is our body.
Oh,
So if
I
we move our body,
absolutely,
yeah.
yes. That's why, yeah, absolutely. That's why with like I specifically do life coaching, which is different than therapy. I'm helping
Mm-hmm.
people get to a new level, but we
Yes.
definitely have to do the backside, which is the hypnotherapy and the emotions and the feelings and what's our body saying. So that's very much incorporated because most of us have been programmed to basically abandon ourselves and abandon the senses of our body and not realize that we are all one piece together to work together. And
Yeah.
it's, yeah, the body keeps the score. That book was, I think,
Yeah.
has made a big impact, and actually was probably the first book that I read where it was like, oh my goodness, I feel like somebody's finally hearing me.
Mm,
So,
yes, right. And it's like Jesus didn't misspoke or anything when he said, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength," or with your body. You know, that's definitely
yes,
has to be there, right?
which
So,
is, yeah, so important. And definitely I've heard messages like the heart is above all deceitful and wicked, and then it's like
yeah,
trust in the Lord with all your heart. So it's like,
yeah,
no, we are all like, we gotta look at the big picture and the whole intention here, because
yes,
our,
yeah.
yeah.
It's so true. And this when it comes to the somatic exercises and stuff, because some people might be like, I have no idea what this is. It's
Mm-hmm.
being able to work within our body to be able to acknowledge a simple way to start, right? If you're kind of newer to this stuff, is to be able to say, for example, if I'm focusing on anxiety, where do I tend to feel anxiety in my body? Where does it show up? For me, a lot of times it's tightness in my jaw, and then it's like my stomach loves to lift up into my chest, right? So it doesn't necessarily look exactly the same for people. But you can tune into your own body and kind of say, almost like a test, right? Let me actually think about something that makes me anxious, you know? It could be anywhere from this person, talking with them, going into work, whatever that thing might be. And then just say, okay, as I'm doing this, I'm not going to overwhelm myself, but I want to notice what my body does, from my breathing to my jaw. Have you ever noticed for yourself, Tara, if your body where it reacts the most in these kind of situations?
Yes. In fact, that's another conversation I was just having with my husband this morning.
Oh
When
wow, yeah.
we were talking about fear, and I was telling him like, right now I'm being super intentional to listen to my body as I'm like recovering from my niece's death. And so, I can tell like fear because I tighten my stomach, I hold my breath, and then
Yeah.
there's tightness in my shoulders and neck, and like knowing the language of my body and like, okay, this is fear, this is shame, this is this, and then I can understand what my body's trying to tell me, and then I can work with it. But if we don't know the language of our body, that, oh, this tightness in my stomach means that I'm afraid, or this
Mhm.
neck thing means I feel a lot of pressure to get stuff done. So like understanding the
Yes,
language it's speaking to me. Yeah.
exactly. That's super powerful. I mean, what an awesome conversation you had with your husband this morning, huh? You're like hitting
I
everything.
know.
Really great. Good
We had a
time with
good one this morning.
so yeah, being able to recognize the way I like to say it is to name it. Name where that is, name the emotion that I'm feeling. And not about judgment. There's also some principles of mindfulness about
Yes.
this. To say, I accept it, I just acknowledge that it's here. I love stuff like internal family systems because it talks about these parts of us. They're not sometimes, especially if we've gone through trauma or somebody abusing us emotionally, verbally, we've been told that somehow this is evil, bad, or wicked, or disgusting of these things that we have. And so sometimes we internalize that message to say, my anxiety, my fear is disgusting, evil, all these kind of things. Instead, it's much better to think of this as like, this is maybe like a lost child or a lost part inside of me that just needs to be brought into the light and be held for a little bit. And so I
Mm,
like to physically use my hands as I'm naming these things to be able to put hands and pressure and touch there on those spots. So that way I'm claiming it as mine. So I name it and then I claim it and say like this is my anxiety and it's okay. You know, a fun thing
I
is okay if
love
I share a
it.
little bit.
Yes.
I I named my anxiety like a character because I found it
Yes.
really cool to make like a persona for it. So
Hmm.
you ever watch Winnie the Pooh? That's a
Yes.
little old school show. So Piglet. Piglet is what
Oh,
we call my
that's what
anxiety.
you call your. I love it.
Because most people do when scared, right? Is just get me under the bed. I want to run away. That's what my anxiety wants to do is like freak out, you know? Just get me out of the situation.
I
So,
love that identifying it. Yeah, I'll name
yeah.
mine, or I'll sometimes have a persona of a squirrel and give it like a
Oh,
look.
squirrel.
Just like these
Yeah.
different squirrels. Like one's like my anxiety one is like cockeye with one eye bigger than the other, and it's like panting all the time.
It's great. I
So
love it. That's awesome. That
So
reminds
it
me of the
makes it
movie.
kind of funny and like curious and compassionate rather than, oh no, you can't have that
Mhm.
feeling and all that. So,
Exactly. So it's suspending the judgment, it's working towards acceptance, and it's a
yes.
commitment to also say, I'm going to be here and I'm going to be present to it, but I'm not going to let it drive the car. That's what I like to say.
Yes.
It's like, I'm not going to let my anxiety just steer me for the rest of my life and say, well, I guess I'm not going out today. I guess I got to cancel all my plans. No, it's like I can be present with Piglet and at the same time allow Piglet to be in the passenger seat, be right here next to me, kind of thing, and be able to
Yes.
acknowledge it. Yeah. So I
Oh,
name
I
it,
love it.
claim it, and the next thing is to try to tame it. And one of the things I love to tame when we get worked up is gratitude. So a question that I love to ask, and a lot of clients found this helpful, is what is something that is good and true right here in this moment? And it doesn't have to be super deep. Like sometimes we might feel, oh, there's this pressure that I have to find the exact right answer. It can literally be like, I like my t-shirt. I'm thankful it's not raining. Like it doesn't have to be super deep, but the whole idea is to get into a genuine state of this is what I'm grateful for right here in this moment. Like even just having this technology, like wow, how cool is it that we get to be able to meet like this and be able to help listeners from across the world at the same
Yes.
time in a moment. So gratitude that helps to shift and tame the anxiety. It doesn't have to be just anxiety. This could be fear, this could be anger, this could be a lot number of areas. As I work with a lot of men, sometimes I see anger showing up very intensely, and this helps to slow that all down because anger just wants to go with a ton of energy. So we do that with taming, and then the last part is being able to aim it. So basically, with aim it, I get to ask myself, what would I like to either ask one or two things because some people find one more helpful than the other. What would God tell me to do in this moment? That'd be helpful. Or what would a really true good friend tell me to do in this moment right now? So that way it kind of helps me to not just be in my head, but to feel some companionship in this. That I don't have to figure it all out. But I can imagine my friend Rick and be able to say, man, with a guy like that, he just says, he doesn't make a big deal about anything. He just kind of says, if that's what's happening, if that's where the finances are right now, or if that's what that person said, let them. It's going to be all right. You don't have to carry it on you anymore.
I love that. So name it, claim it, tame it, and aim it.
That's exactly it. Those 4 steps.
Awesome. Good job.
Yeah,
That's the
and
great tool.
thanks. And the cool thing is usually you'll feel those spots in your body is if you do like a check-in. You can do it throughout or you can do it at the end is you'll feel that those parts of you have settled back down. That they're not so squirrely, as you kind of said, but they're more like settled into like my piglet is just more chilling, you know, not perfect. I'm not expecting it to be like not worried about anything at all anymore. So, but just say like it's now under control. Now we're working together.
Nice. Piglet can be your friend, not me ruling you.
Yes, that's part of the reason I chose Piglet, right? It's like who gets scared of Piglet? It's not such a bad part, you know?
I love it. That's awesome. Well, it sounds like you were really put to the test recently to save someone's
Mhm.
life who was in a severe accident. Can you tell us what happened?
That was a wild story. So all I was doing literally was going about my day. I work a lot from home, but I do go into office as well. I was home this day, and I was just going to the mailbox, and I'm just wearing like shorts and flip flops. So this is like laid back Eric just going about his business, dropping a check in the mail. And so I go to the mailbox, and then I realize as I'm there, I kind of realize there's like a car coming up, but the car stops. And I'm like, well, I'm not that far on the street. Why would it stop? And then I look to the left and I realize there's another car in the middle of the street. And I realized the person that stepped out of the car was on the phone. I didn't know what was going on yet. But then I started to like look further and realize there was a lot of people coming out of houses and stuff. And I'm like, something must have just happened. And then I look a little bit further on like the corner where the stop sign is, and there's a minivan that has flipped all the way upside down. So some kind of like intense accident. I would never guess this in a million years because our neighborhood's like only 20 miles an hour. So I'm like, how does a minivan flip upside down here? But then I started to, at this point, I'm running because I'm like, I don't know what's happening, but like it looks like this just happened. And I think the lady's on the phone with 911. So I get there, and sure enough, that's exactly what she's doing. And I hear what she's saying, and she says, she's still in the car. She is still in the car. We need help immediately, you know? And then I look, and sure enough, there's a guy trying to like assess the situation and seeing like this lady is actually in the car upside down with her seatbelt on. And I go up to like closer to the window now, and he says to me, she can't breathe. And then
Oh
I
gosh.
look into the window, and sure enough, the seatbelt is cutting off her breathing. And I, at this point, I'm kind of like crawling in to see like what I could do to try to assess the situation myself. And now, little caveat: I'm not an EMT. I'm not like somebody that's first line responder or anything like that. I'm just more like an average guy that tries to help people as they're going through life, right? More the coaching side, the counseling side, not so much of like I'm an emergency room doctor. So I'm kind of like worried about this. It's kind of anxious, kind of like, wow, somebody's life is like right here. And so I try to just say, God, what does it look like for me to still be calm, not to panic, and just to sincerely try to help? And so the guy makes a suggestion, actually. He says, why don't we grab a knife and you can grab one from your house and come back and help cut it. And for about 3 seconds, I've started following that advice. I like got up, started going out, and then I realized that's going to take forever. So I double
Mhm.
back, and then I reach, and I'm like, well, Lord, please be with me in this. I take a deep breath. I look at the lady and try to communicate with her. I just say, I'm going to try to release your seatbelt. And she looks at me and she gives me like a little nod so she kind of knows what's coming. So at this point, I don't know how much I can control in the situation. I don't know if she's gonna just smash onto my head. But at this point, I'm like, even if she hits me, it's gonna be better that she can breathe than I like if she hits my head. It's not that bad. So I reach up, I reach over as far as I can. Thank God I got some long arms, and I was able to feel the little plastic button, right? And I just smash that sucker as hard as I can, and then the seatbelt starts to release, right? What I hadn't thought about was when you're upside down, the waist, of course, is going to be the first part to release before the shoulder does. But it ended up being a really good thing because her body actually does a full flip. So instead of landing on her head, her body flips and she lands on her legs and her back
Oh,
first because then the shoulder released and then her upper body went.
oh
And the
wow.
good thing is in the minivan, there's an airbag. I'm glad to say when I was able to press the button, I got enough out of the way that I think she might have like touched my arms. Like I was just trying to cradle her, but she didn't like hit me on my back or my head or anything like that. And then I just heard that noise I wanted so much, which is, like I
Oh
feared her finally
gosh.
just breathe and start to cry and like whimper and just kind of let it all out. And after you go through that trauma, it's actually good to release that from your body, not to fight it or pretend like it's not there. I have
Like
two little
shake it
toddler
out.
twins, and like sometimes I just tell them it's okay to shake it out. It's being able to release this stuff from our
Yes.
body. So at that point, The other guy comes alongside, and we both reach into this window, and we're actually helping to bring her out of the car and assess and see how she's doing. And yeah, she has some bruising. She has a deep kind of like red gash, well, not a gash, but like a mark across her neck. But thank God she's okay.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and we're just able to sit with her. I actually said Dios le bendiga because she spoke Spanish, which is like God bless you, God's with you in this, and
Oh,
just was able to offer like an ice pack and stuff. And then the paramedic showed up. It was probably 5 minutes later. So in a situation like that, that would have been way too late, you know?
yes. Oh, Eric, that is so cool. And it's neat how you can use your training and integrate it into your whole life and help this woman save her life. So that's really a great story.
And that's the idea for anyone who's listening is that it's not just about me, but like literally God could call you. So one of my favorite Bible verses is that the eyes of the Lord go to and fro across the earth, looking for those who are fully His, so that He would strengthen them. So that has been my heart's desire ever since my college years, where I decided to go all in with God, of saying, Lord, I want to be fully yours, and just knowing that God really, it's not about perfection, it's not about performance. Of course, like if people were looking at a qualification sheet, I would never be the person that's like first responder, like choose Eric Gilbert to be an EMT, you know? But God just decided, like, Eric, I'm going to make sure that Eric's available for this moment. And so if you ever just find yourself going through life, checking your mailbox, being with your kids, or whatever it might be, that God can use you for surprising and mighty things if you're just available and you want to be used by Him.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. That's powerful. So I always ask people this, Eric. How do you personally and intentionally support yourself to live brighter 1% at a time? What do you do for yourself?
Yeah, I love this question, and I was thinking a little bit about it, and I realize that my answer is probably simple, but it's very genuine. Is I love the passages that also talk about keeping in step with the Spirit, walking with the Spirit. So I have a tendency, this relates to my anxiety, to try to think ahead, to try to anticipate, to try to go into like, what's it all going to play out? Or sometimes we can go into the past with my mind. What's happened before? How could I have done better? Blah, blah, blah. But that's not what I'm called to do. I'm just called to stay in step with the Spirit, trusting that God's the one that's sovereign and in control of these things. So to look, when I think of being 1% better through my daily life, I just say, like, what's it look like for me to be synchronized in my steps with the Spirit? Uh,
Mm.
my wife is Peruvian from South America, and so we met up in Illinois, where I'm from, and she taught me to salsa dance. So if you can believe it, this gringo can actually do a little bit of dancing and knows how to do a few steps, you know. But I remember what it was like trying to learn to dance and trying to do the steps. And it's like the cool thing with dancing is even when you get really into it, more advanced, it's still about the simple steps. It's about the fundamentals. So that's the idea of my relationship with the Holy Spirit too, is I want to stay in step with the Spirit, not just get into the performance or fancy moves or just trying to make a big deal out of things. That really, it's just about the basics.
I love it. Thank you so much. So you have a download for a free devotional and a quiz at
Hmm.
havefaith.co. So please look into that. We'll also have some links to your website. And thank you so much for your time, Eric.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the cool thing with the download and everything is it helps to look at your level of fear or anxiety and then also be able to step into faith and courage. So I love to be able to help people with their calling or being able to know more of what is it that I could be equipped to do so I can be on the front lines serving God as well.
I love it. So reach out to Eric. This has been a great conversation and make it a great day.
Yes. Thank you so much, Tara.
Stay tuned for our next episode.